the agreement is do not believe yourself or anybody else, but learn to listen. Welcome to Satori Mindset Podcast. My name is Yuki Yoshii, and this is your time, your moment to reflect on yourself, your life, and to integrate your journey to feel aligned, and to ultimately make the awakened version of you a default mode. So let's begin. So I've been doing this Golden Nugget series of different spiritual pioneers that I include their philosophy and perspective into the teaching and practice that I offer to people. I've been doing different people all last week. Today, I'm going to talk about Don Miguel Ruiz. So he is an author of the well-known book called Four Agreements. So most people know this author as that book, but I actually love his Fifth Agreement book. And today I want to talk about that particular agreement. The first four agreements, I'm going to share a little bit. The first agreement is be impeccable with the words. So every words that you speak internally and externally, you want to recognize the power of it. And his suggestion is to never speak against yourself because words are powerful. And this sounds like a simple agreement, but it's very powerful. And it requires a conscious attention to consistently practice to be able to only use words that speak to serve us in favor of our growth and expansion. Then number two, the agreement number two is don't make any assumption, right? So people start projecting the worst case scenario towards future by assuming something, or in a relationship setting when somebody does something and you start creating a scenario that doesn't exist by making an assumption. So that is also an extension of being impeccable with the words. He talks about the first agreement is the most fundamental agreement. The agreement number three is do not make anything personal. This is a huge one for a lot of people, right? People tend to make personally when somebody tells you something that is, let's say, negative, and you take on, even though every single thing that somebody tells you is a projection of his or her own words, right? The world that they're living. So it's very powerful to begin implementing all these agreement to begin living it instead of understanding as a knowledge. The fourth agreement is to be your best, right? Be the best that you can. But the way that I like to use this agreement is to recognize and understand that every single person around you is doing their best at the level of awareness that they're in. So that is a powerful statement because people tend to not to recognize that, therefore taking it personally or therefore making an assumption, right? So everything is interconnected. But in this particular video, the the top golden nuggets is in his fifth agreement. And I love his fifth agreement so much. And the agreement is do not believe yourself or anybody else, but learn to listen. Now, the reason that he says that is because every single thing that we talk about internally, many things actually, right, comes from your conditioned mind. So we are conditioned to think about ourselves or see the world in a certain way based on the programming that we receive through our environmental conditioning or even genetic programming. And often that is not true. So everything and anything that we speak against ourselves is based on the lie, based on the story that we have lived. So instead of making that real in your experience, he's saying to cultivate a capacity to doubt your own thinking and your own inner dialogue so you don't get consumed by it. Now, people in the world are also living based on that programming and conditioning. Then we don't want to let that impact ourselves, but to not to believe what people tell you because whatever that they people tell you is coming from their conditioned mind. And the value and the importance and the benefit of us really implementing and embodying this fifth agreement is that we don't get trapped inside of our programming, right? And it's interesting because when we start believing the programming, that's gonna create a reflection in the outside. So in order to change our belief, we first need to recognize what the beliefs are, right? And then in order to not to be consumed and trapped inside of our belief, our own thinking, we want to cultivate an ability to actually not to believe what we're talking to ourselves and not to believe the words that we're speaking to ourselves and to be the observant from the outside. And this is a so powerful practice that you can change the way in which you live inside of you, because now you're not in this inside of this jar that is called my story, my programming, but we can practice living outside of the jar so we can see the label or what kind of label we're putting ourselves in this context, because the world that we're living, the experience, is a reflection of our belief. And most of the time, belief doesn't have any foundation, right? We kind of absorb it when we were little because the subconscious was fully open and that is controlling our life. So it's important to step back and begin doubting the word, to not to believe ourselves, anybody else, but to learn to listen the intent underneath, where this, narrative is coming from. Thank you for listening to the podcast. A message I want you to take with you is this: you have a power to choose how you see yourself and the world at any given moment. So stay connected to that wisdom.